Hi students, tomorrow you have an MOQ, and I'm going to review a few things using our anchor text omnivore's dilemma, so you can think about these things when you're taking the test tomorrow. Okay, so a few tips for MLQ. First, read and annotate the questions, especially if it's informational text. A lot of you, like I've said before, you enjoy reading fictional stories, but this informational text is a bit of a struggle for you. Pay attention to the title of the passages and any subheadings if the passage is broken into sections. As you read, annotate for understanding and also annotate for the development strategies, the way in which the information is being presented, and all the techniques that the author is using to give you that information and to make it understandable. Do not skip or ignore any pictures, diagrams, charts, or graphs. Analyze, which means to examine closely, the development strategies the author uses to provide the information. So, very quickly, I'm going to go over the development strategies that we have actually seen in Omnivore's Dilemma. Michael Pollan, and that's him right here, he has used a lot of facts, of course, definitions of things that we don't know or haven't heard of before, and descriptions of things in order to get us to understand things like feedlots, what bushels of corn are, the production of corn, the processing of corn, how corn is basically manipulated by using hybrid and GMO genetically modified organisms. He's given us a lot of facts and definitions and descriptions of those things so we could understand the information better. He has broken each chapter down into sections, and each one of those sections have subheadings. And those subheadings kind of give us a little reminder of what that section is basically about. Word choice. His word choice is very, very specific. You can kind of tell what side of the argument Michael Pollan is on, whether he's like pro omnivore eating meat, and or if he's kind of like against. He uses a lot of words that kind of create a tone of sarcasm in here, where he's kind of like sounding kind of critical of the food production and people who process the meat and who care for the cows and stuff like that, and the way our food is being processed and handled, and the choices that we're making about food. It sounds very sarcastic. And sarcastic is like a nice way of saying kind of opinionated, strongly opinionated. He gives us a lot of examples, especially of the products that corn is used to produce. He uses a few experts like corn scientists and agriculturists and farmers and stuff like that in order to give us the information as well. He uses anecdotes throughout the entire book because he went on this journey to find out all of this information, and he basically starts off almost every chapter telling us a little bit about where this investigation of the food has taken him. So he's using anecdotes throughout the entire story. He uses a lot of illustrations, which we have not been focusing on as much in the book, but we definitely will go back and kind of analyze those illustrations in the book. But we did specifically talk about infographics, and infographics are visuals that kind of help you understand the text. And we looked at two infographics on GMOs, and we looked at two infographics on grain-fed versus grass-fed cows. So moving on, we talked a lot about the central idea, and I'm more than sure that if you have an informational passage on your MLQ, they're going to ask you a question about central idea. Remember these points. Read the whole paragraph or section first. Go back and skim for words that repeat. That will definitely give you an idea of what the central idea is. Underline essential information as you read, things we must know from the section for it to make sense. This does not include all of the little small details. Remember, central idea is like the main idea of that section or the entire passage. And when you're trying to figure out the central idea, answer these two questions. who is the paragraph or section mostly about, and what is the paragraph or section mostly about. And the situation idea, if you have to write it, which I doubt it, you probably will be in a multiple choice form, should be 1 to 2 sentences. Author's purpose. This is another very, very important skill that you should be able to master when you're talking about informational text. Figuring out the purpose of why the author is writing or giving us this information. It could be to inform us, it could be to describe, clarify understanding, to educate us, to illustrate, to show a cause and effect relationship between things, compare and contrast, persuade, express an opinion. Michael Pollan does all of these things throughout the text that we're reading, Omnivore's Dilemma. But when you're on a multiple choice, when you're on a test, it'll be one of these words plus the detail that is associated with it. You really have to pay attention to the detail that is connected to the purpose. So it depends on what if they're asking about the purpose of the entire passage or the purpose of this infographic or the purpose of a particular paragraph or the purpose of maybe a particular section in the not in the text. So please make sure you are paying close attention to the detail that is associated or connected with the purpose. All right. You can pause the video right now and you can read over these definitions of purposes and the examples that are associated with each one of these author's purposes. All right. So I'm sure that on the MLQ, they are going to have a visual or some type of infographic that you will have to analyze. So this is your last kind of practice before tomorrow's MLQ. You're going to analyze the infographic on the next slide to gather information and answer a few questions. We're going to go over these answers during conference time as a review for the MLQ. So this is the infographic right here. The title of the infographic is called The Multi-Step Path to a Better U.S. Beef Supply Chain. Now, if it's too hard for you to read this on this slide, then you can pause the video and you can go to the ELA webpage and click on 1022 infographic path for better beef supply, and you can actually see a better picture and you can even blow it up and read the information a little better. So pause the video here, go to the ELA webpage and read through this information, and then come back to the Educating video to answer your questions. So question number 1, how is the information presented in this infographic? Compare and contrast, cause and effect, flowchart, or chronological order. The correct answer is flowchart. It is a flowchart because the information basically is presented from the beginning of the cow calf life all the way to the supermarket. Okay, so it is presented in a flowchart manner. Most of the infographics that we looked at were presented in a compare and contrast format where they were comparing the grass-fed and grain-fed cows. Question number 2. What is the purpose of this infographic? A, to provide information on the use of feedlots. B, to compare and contrast grain-fed and grass-fed cattle. C, to describe the life of cattle from birth to supermarket. D, to inform readers of the percentage of cattle raised on grass and the percentage raised on feedlots. The correct answer is C, to describe the life of cattle from birth to supermarket. The word life in the answer choice indicates over time and over a course or a period of time. If you look right here, this column talks about the cow calf operations and from 4 to 7 months old and how much they weigh, and then it goes through that they are then shipped to background feeders and then sold to background feeders, background operations, stock operations, grass finishing, then feedlots, processing, then supermarket. The last question, question number 3. What is the best purpose for the picture circles used on the infographic? Quickly, choose your answer. The correct answer is A, to help readers recall each stage of the cow's life. Even if you don't actually know all of the information that is listed under the pictures, just simply looking at those pictures